Hello everyone, good evening. I'm Shreya Dhoundial. In the last couple of weeks, there is one man who has stood out in Afghanistan for his absolute refusal to bow down to the Taliban. The politicians melted away, the military disappeared, and the famed warlords of the past escaped to safety. But Amrullah Saleh, the former vice president of Afghanistan, didn't. In the land of his birth, the Panjshir Valley, the only province that has not fallen to the Taliban, he has raised the flag of resistance. The Taliban has surrounded the province. It is from here that Amrullah Saleh has spoken to CNN News 18's Manoj Gupta. Saleh, for a long time, has been a thorn in the flesh of Pakistan and the Taliban. In fact, he has blamed Pakistan and the US for plunging Afghanistan into uncertainty and chaos. He has gone on to say that the United States of America blackmailed the Afghan leadership to release Talibani prisoners to buy peace with the Taliban. On Debrief today, Saleh's story, the last man standing in Afghanistan. First, hear from the spy turned politician on who betrayed Afghanistan. The Panjshir Valley, the last province standing against the Taliban, surrounded by the enemy, is prepping for battle. It is from here that the face of the Afghan resistance, Amrullah Saleh, has spoken to CNN News 18. Saleh, the self-declared president of Afghanistan, has trained his guns against friends and foes alike. He blames the swift and stunning fall of Kabul within 9 days, both on Pakistan and the United States of America. In fact, he goes on to accuse the Americans of blackmailing the Afghan government.
The whole of Pakistan was in the service of the Taliban. United States tried to incentivize the Pakistani cooperation to buy it. The more they paid, it more emboldened the Pakistanis to provide more services and more aid to the Taliban. The second reason is the Doha talks legitimized the Taliban. And the Taliban did not remain loyal to their words. The purpose of the Doha office was to keep the international community divided, keep them hopeful for a peace process which did not exist, but they were investing on military conquest, and Pakistanis were backing them wholeheartedly. In the last 2 years, the Republic came under enormous pressure from our American allies. There came a time they blackmailed us. They said, either you release the prisoners or we will cut aid to you. We will decrease our military assistance to you. So it was not prisoner release. It was gifting the Taliban a division of highly radicalized fighters.
As the US exits Afghanistan after 20 years, Saleh is clear. The war was not lost on the ground. It was lost in the White House that simply ran out of political will to carry on.
It wasn't the Taliban who won this war. It was the lack of political will in Washington which led this scramble to happen. The bottom line is NATO is gone, US military is gone, but the Afghan people are not gone, and the Afghan people cannot be evacuated. Kabul airport is tip of an iceberg. The country has sunk into a tragedy.
Amrullah Saleh was the vice president of Afghanistan when it fell to the Taliban. Unlike his boss Ashraf Ghani, he didn't escape to the UAE and instead chose to raise the flag of resistance against the Taliban as part of the Northern Alliance. The Taliban has said, though they have surrounded the Panjshir Valley, they want to deal with Saleh and co. peacefully. The resistance and Saleh want a piece of the pie in the next government that will be formed in Kabul. The first round of talks, though, between the resistance and the Taliban have broken down.
This is a shame, and this is a betrayal, and I don't want to be part of that shame. I don't want to be part of that betrayal. We will fight. We will fight until the enemy believes and comes to a conclusion that Afghanistan should remain Afghanistan and it should not become Talibanistan.
And so Amrullah Saleh's fight continues.
I am standing for my country and the war is not over.
If that is what it takes, he says, he will be the last man standing in Afghanistan. With Manoj Gupta in New Delhi, I'm Shreya Dhoundial. Let's get a quick sense of where the Panjshir resistance is headed under Saleh. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash and General Atta Hasnain are joining me on Debrief. Ambassador Prakash, let me start with you. Should the Panjshir resistance look at India for some help? Is India in a position to help?
The winds are in the sails of Taliban. China, Pakistan, Russia, Iran, Turkey are supporting Taliban. Who is supporting Panjshir? They have been surrounded. They have been cut off. They say that they have supplies. They have food supplies still, which can last them until winter or beyond. Ahmad Massoud says that they have salted away weaponry. The Tajik fighters have also brought in, who had left Anna, they have also brought in weaponry. And they are people of great valor. They have a history behind them, I agree. But it's an unequal fight. And unless, last time when Northern Alliance was fighting, they had access to Tajikistan. This time they have been cut off. So yes, they can fight. How long can they fight is $1 million question. I do not see, at least at this juncture, countries coming to the assistance of these brave people.
Will India do anything to endanger our assets? Because the fact is, the Taliban may be the devil, but by the end of the day, it could very well be, General Hasnain, that we'll have to do business with them.
If we had shared a common border with Afghanistan, let alone a common border with the Panjshir Valley, if we at least had a border with Afghanistan, perhaps some kind of a surreptitious effort would have carried on. But here, we can only pay lip service at the moment. I'm sure Amrullah Saleh has a host of supporters all over India. Everyone loves a brave, good fighter, and which is what the Afghans are, all of them who are resisting this. But to come down to the practical terms, to a resistance movement needs not only human resources, it needs financial resources, material resources, weapons and equipment. The will is all there. But how is this going to be put together? As you very correctly say, the Americans, even after 31st of August, may not want to burn their fingers immediately. Well, if anything I can foresee at all, it could be a back channel kind of a support. I still do very strongly believe that international borders, these borders which exist in these areas of this kind, are not necessarily obstacles. As long as someone from behind can support you financially, materially, that support will reach you.
Now, Saleh is a Tajik from Panjshir, while majority of the Talibs are Pashtuns. But this is not just a tribal rivalry or an ideological battle that is playing out. For Saleh, his hatred for the Taliban is much more personal. Here's the life story of a man who has escaped multiple assassination attempts to become the face of the Afghan resistance. In a matter of hours, the man leading a country abandoned his people and fled in shame. He left his countrymen to the mercy of the invading barbarians. Cometh the man the hour. One leader fled, but another, his deputy, decided to hoist the flag of resistance. The war is not over, declared Amrullah Saleh.
I am standing for my country and the war is not over.
Those who know him call him enigmatic, filled with deep anguish and a sense of revenge against the Taliban. It's personal for him. In 1996, Saleh's sister Maryam, then in her 50s, was tortured and beaten by Taliban fighters who were looking for him. He spoke about the incident in a Time magazine op-ed.
My sister struggled with that memory until she died in 2016. my view of the Taliban changed forever because of what happened in 1996.
He is now the last man standing against the Taliban as thousands of Afghans flee. Soon after Kabul fell, Saleh, citing the country's constitution, declared himself Afghanistan's caretaker president. Next, he showed up in Panjshir, his birthplace, to cobble up a resistance front. In Afghanistan, they talk about his 9 lives because of the number of assassination attempts he has survived. The last one being a year ago when a bomb targeted his convoy. He escaped with slight burns, but 12 others died. Born in 1972 in a Tajik family, Saleh was orphaned at a young age. Coming from a humble, landless family, he soon found himself in the midst of Mujahideen resistance in the 1990s against the Soviets. It was being led by the legendary Afghan guerrilla commander Ahmad Shah Massoud. He rose up the ranks pretty quickly to become the group's liaison officer for foreign intelligence services. With the rise of the Taliban in the late 90s, Saleh, under the Northern Alliance umbrella, fought against them. Given his tactical understanding of Afghanistan, Saleh's rise was imminent after the American invasion. After 26/11, he became a key asset for the CIA. For 6 years, as the NDS boss, he established a vast network of spies, not just in his own country, but also across the border in Pakistan. Through his informants, Saleh was able to discover and avoid a number of suicide attacks planned against him from inside Pakistan. In 2017, he joined the cabinet of President Ashraf Ghani and was made Interior Minister. In February 2020, he rose to become the country's first vice president. Articulate, astute and defiant, can Saleh, the forever spy, the man with the 9 lives, sustain the resistance against the Taliban? There have been some early successes, but the long war against the Taliban has only just begun. With Rajiv Kumar in New Delhi, I'm Shreya Dhoundial. And people who know Saleh say that Saleh has just begun. Afghans who can afford to leave are leaving Afghanistan, scientists and doctors and students and engineers and musicians as well. Afghanistan's best known musician, its biggest pop star, Aryana says she would have been killed had she not escaped Kabul. She's joining us on Debrief next. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Afghanistan is a country of 4 crore people. A little over 1 lakh, those with resources, have managed to flee. Amongst them, Afghanistan's most popular pop star, Aryana Saeed. She says, had she not escaped the Taliban, they would have killed her. She's joining us on the show, but before that, here's her story.
It's 2015. A cricket-crazy nation is all set to enjoy the latest edition of its Afghan Premier League. And cheering them on is their biggest pop star, Aryana Saeed. She didn't have to wear a hijab, nor was she prohibited in any way while performing in front of a massive crowd of her fans. In 6 years, it all came crashing down. Afghanistan's biggest pop star forced to flee the country she so desperately loves. Aryana Saeed made a hasty exit from Kabul when it became clear that the Taliban rule was returning. She managed to fly out last week on an American evacuation plane. The singer is now safe in Istanbul, where she lives with a music producer, Hasib Saeed. Aryana is not just a singer, but a songwriter and a TV personality as well. She sings mostly in Dari, but also has some Pashto songs. Feminism features prominently in her compositions. Aryana's meteoric rise saw her become one of Afghanistan's most progressive female entertainers, choosing not to wear a hijab. She was born in Kabul in 1985. Her family left Afghanistan when she was 8 and lived in Peshawar for a while before settling in Switzerland. Aryana has time and again challenged the Taliban's idea of how women should be. In 2017, she was supposed to hold a concert in the Ghazi Stadium in Kabul, notorious for Taliban's execution of women in the 1990s. Through a concert, she wanted to highlight how Afghan women were not free 98 years after independence. The authorities eventually cancelled that show after mullahs raised a storm. After she left Afghanistan, Aryana put up a social media post criticizing Joe Biden for a chaotic exit and President Ashraf Ghani for fleeing like a coward. She does insist, though, that Afghanistan's only true friend is India.
On behalf of the entire nation of Afghanistan, I want to express my utmost gratitude to India. And I want to say thank you because, over the years, we have realized that the only good friends amongst the neighborhood that we had, it was India.
Aryana left with a heavy heart and a promise to do everything she can for Afghans. With Natasha Menden, Ritangshu Bhattacharya for CNN News 18.
The days of music and dance and singing clearly over in Afghanistan. Aryana Saeed joining us on the show. Aryana, thank you very much. You are one of Afghanistan's best known musicians. You're a star. Why were you forced to leave?
Well, first of all, Taliban never allowed music. For them, music is something that's bad and it's a sin and it shouldn't be a part of an Islamic country. So for me, I've been doing music for the past 10 years and I've spent most of my time in Afghanistan, despite the challenges and the fact that, to them I was doing something wrong. But then obviously we had an official government and they were not, able to get a hold of me, where I was doing my music in Kabul all these years. But suddenly when they have taken over, there's no more place for me in that country, unfortunately, because music will be banned, period. There's no space for me to stay there anymore. And then, of course, besides my music, I've been a women's rights activist in the past many years, and that's why also I have been a target. And for that reason, I had to escape the country, unfortunately, once they took over. Because if they caught me alive, I would have been in real trouble.
So, Aryana, do you believe that had you stayed back, you would have been executed by the Taliban? Is that what you believe?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what they would do to me. I don't know. But this, I know for sure that I have been a target and they looked at me as one of their major, targets because of the fact that I've been very outspoken about the women's rights and their freedom and things like that. So what they would have done to me, I cannot say anything right now, but I definitely, thought that probably they would have paraded me in front of the cameras. They would have probably ridiculed me, or even worse. I'm not sure.
Aryana, we've seen some very heartbreaking pictures coming out of the Kabul airport. You escaped via the Kabul airport and you tried for 48 hours. You had a heartbreaking moment with a mother and a child as well. Could you tell our viewers about that?
Yes, when I got closer to the gate, there was a young mother with a little baby. The baby was like screaming and screaming and screaming for such a long time that I almost thought that this baby is going to die any minute now. Even though, there was a guy who was helping her with the baby, he was holding the baby in the air so that she can have oxygen, because there was literally no oxygen to breathe, because people are like so stuffed, like stick to each other and no space. So we get like right next to the gate. This lady is still like right beside me, and she's screaming and saying, let me in, because I'm an American citizen. And I asked her, I said, okay, where are your papers? Where's your passport? And then she says she doesn't have a passport. Her husband is lost in the crowd somewhere and he has the passport. And so as the soldiers were coming to get me inside, I'm like begging them. I'm like, can you please let this woman in because her baby's gonna die, and I'm holding her baby. And one of, in one corner of my heart is saying, should I take her baby inside with me? And then the other, my mind is saying, no, you cannot do that, because if this lady doesn't make it tonight, if they don't let her in, I cannot separate the baby from her mother because she was like really too young. So that was really heartbreaking, and not just her. There was like women fainting, out of the lack of oxygen and air. There was literally kids screaming and crying, and families, and it was just heartbreaking. It was terrifying and terrible.
And what we've seen at the Kabul airport has just been the tip of the iceberg, as many are saying. Aryana, what do you fear most for those who have been left behind?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really concerned, firstly, for the women and for the children. And then I am worried for those people who are actually a part of the previous government and the people who were working for the international organizations. Their lives are in real danger right now. But my main concern is actually women, because women in Afghanistan are the most vulnerable right now. And, just what we have seen and what we have experienced with Taliban before, like 20 years ago, there is no life for women in Afghanistan. There is no life for them, period. They're not allowed to go outside. They're not allowed to study. They're not allowed to work. I mean, I know that I hear news that Taliban are saying, we will give them their rights under the Sharia law or the circle of Islam. But what the Sharia law says about women's rights, we have no idea what that is. And then where is the guarantee that the Taliban will actually act upon their promises that they're making right now? And who's going to, take them accountable? Who?
Do you think you'll ever be able to go back to your homeland, to Afghanistan?
If Afghanistan is left in their hands, I do not think there will be a future for me or a day when I can return back to Afghanistan. There's no way. I mean, right now, I just heard from my friends at Cholo TV. This is one of the biggest TVs in Afghanistan, where I used to be a judge on a talent show. And they told me on the phone yesterday that apparently Taliban were there and they had a meeting with some of them. And they said that there will be no music, period. I mean, if there's no music, obviously there's no space for me, because I'm a musician, I'm a singer, and if I cannot continue with my career and I cannot be there, no, I don't think so.
How does that make you feel, the prospect of never being able to go back?
It's devastating, honestly devastating. My heart is just broken, because 20 years, right? 20 years of effort and challenges and hard work, not just for me, but for so many other women who were in Afghanistan, and they worked so hard to achieve something, and then suddenly they were all taken away from them. And for me, I was in Afghanistan. I've been to Afghanistan for about 10 years now, because I initially left as a child. And then in 2010, I made a choice to go back to Afghanistan and work from there and try to give some hope and some positive energy to all those innocent, women. And then I really did work hard, despite the challenges, despite getting threatened all the time, despite the fact that they were after me to kill me. And I was still there, I spent so much of my energy, my time in Afghanistan, and then it was just snatched away from me just like that in a span of a few days.
And not just from you, Aryana, the prospect of never returning to your motherland is very painful, almost heartbreaking. We wish you and all the Afghan people all the very best. Thank you very much for your time here on Debrief. And to all our viewers, thanks very much for watching. Good night.